Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Go to Bolt fam, it's the director. Chargers fans, I don't know, man. The news keeps rolling in. Have you guys been watching some of the interviews of the coaches from the breakfast they had this morning? They did the whole spiel with the class photo 2024 with all the coaches, did some new interviews. It's a pleasure watching Coach Harbaugh talk about the upcoming season, what he views as a very talented quarterback class. And then, honestly, it feels like the more you hear him talk, especially about JJ McCarthy, the more you feel like maybe he's got a plan up his sleeve in regards of the Chargers, their draft, and pretty much his perspective and experience going into this season, dude, because honestly, it feels very unique. And everything I've read about Coach Harbaugh, everything that he's done so far from signing with the Chargers to the information he gives out in terms of the offseason, it feels like it's very strategically calculated, right? And I think in terms of what we're hearing this morning, in terms of what we could potentially see on draft day, Coach Harbaugh is setting something up pretty special for the Bolts in 2024. You'll take a look at what was quoted this morning. Harbaugh says coaches and executives around the league have privately raved to him about Michigan quarterback JJ McCarthy. Harbaugh, he plays quarterback the best of all quarterbacks. I love JJ McCarthy, okay? No slight against him, but quite honestly, it feels like Coach Harbaugh has set something up brilliantly in terms of maybe swaying public opinion or, a private opinion in terms of the NFL and its GMs and its coaches on just how good JJ McCarthy is. And that could definitely have a rippling effect as to who's available to the Chargers at pick number 5, and maybe, just maybe, set up some of the biggest blockbuster trades we've seen for the Chargers on draft day, maybe even ever. So before we do get started here, guys, shout out to the sponsor, right? We got Underdog Fantasy in the house. Use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $100. Get in on the action. A great way to support the channel. Have some fun along the way. Newcomers, definitely take a look at this special on screen here. Before we do kick off, hit us up the like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to the like, sub, and bell notification. Helps me out a lot. Let's get into this, baby. Lights, camera, action. How I believe Jim Harbaugh is creating a masterful draft strategy right before our very eyes. Now, as we mentioned at the top of the show, it feels like Coach Harbaugh is setting the table beautifully in terms of what the opinion of JJ McCarthy could be. Now, again, I'm no expert scout kind of guy. I'm not going to go watch every game, every tape of JJ McCarthy, but I did watch a couple of games, all right? I did watch some, footage and stuff you're going to find on YouTube, but I have seen, including the championship game, I would say a pretty good amount of reps here and there. And again, no slight against JJ McCarthy. I think certainly he does have the potential to be a very good quarterback in the NFL. I just don't see it quite as clearly. And yes, maybe the deeper you dig, the more you find, the more you get excited about. But in this draft class in particular, I don't know. Maybe it's naive to say, maybe it's naive to think. I just kind of see a higher upside in guys like Michael Penix. And it feels like maybe by the upselling from Jim Harbaugh, the league may be swayed in its opinion of JJ McCarthy, which has a couple of rippling effects in terms of consequences in the draft that could really help the Chargers out. And this began a while back. I remember hearing Coach Harbaugh talking to Rich Eisen as to how he thinks JJ McCarthy could be the number 1 quarterback off the board in what is a very talented quarterback class. That, to me, already, I was feeling, all right, this man's out here doing the Lord's work. We're trying to help the Chargers draft stock. I think at that time, everyone's hoping to see any glimmer of hope of Marvin Harrison Jr. making his way to number 5, which is very possible at this point. But now the more we continue to hear Jim Harbaugh praise, of course he's going to praise, JJ McCarthy as being the guy that helped him win a national championship. But the more he continues to drive that narrative and knife that narrative into the minds and hearts of NFL GMs and coaches, the more I feel like there could be a strategy here. I honestly think, Jim Harbaugh, who never, looks less than 2 or 3 steps ahead, is setting himself up in terms of what would be available to him in the draft. And I think JJ McCarthy could end up being a very important piece there. Not to say, again, if a team trades up to get a guy like JJ or drafts JJ a lot higher than a lot of us anticipate, not to say that he couldn't succeed, but I think in terms of what he benefits the Chargers in his draft position is something worth mentioning on a Chargers related channel. So there is a lot of talk. And again, how much Jim Harbaugh has to do with this, I don't know. But now there is a lot of talk the last couple of weeks as to how teams are desperately willing to trade up into a top 5 position to get JJ McCarthy. I think quarterback, the position itself, should be mentioned first. That is certainly the number one objective of these teams that want to trade up. But now we're hearing a lot of these teams linked to JJ McCarthy in particular. Okay? And I think the excitement and the hype built around JJ via Jim Harbaugh has a little bit to do with it. But I feel like, I don't know, the excitement around JJ makes that possible, right? And it feels like the possibility of quarterback going 1, 2, 3, 4 becomes that much more likely. And it was something that was actually mentioned by Jim Harbaugh this morning in terms of what he feels is possible, that he feels that, you know, the talk around the league right now is quarterback going 1, 2, 3, 4. I think he believes it. And even if he doesn't, I think, again, he's setting up the table for other teams like the Giants and the Vikings to become a little bit more uneasy and staying firm in their position. We've already seen teams like the Minnesota Vikings prepare themselves for a trade-up by acquiring an extra first-round pick. If you're going to get aggressive, and if JJ McCarthy really has climbed as to the number 3 or 4 quarterback on your board, maybe higher for some guys, then he will be worth trading up for, okay? But one of the biggest aspects of this whole thing that I think is maybe going overlooked, something that I honestly can't believe is happening, but I'm hearing more and more rumors and news about, is the fact that a lot of teams are now saying that JJ McCarthy is ahead of Jaden Daniels in their rankings. Which, mind you, okay, maybe, again, depending on what you're looking for, the style of quarterback, maybe JJ McCarthy fits what you're trying to do a little bit better, but I don't know if I see it. I don't know if I buy it. And quite honestly, again, as like an observer, right, as a fan of the game, it feels like a setup. Someone's going to get up there and trade up to number 4 or number 5 and then walk up to the podium and I've been had. I mean, JJ is cool, but we could have had Jaden Daniels. The point here I'm trying to make is that what if a team does draft Jaden Daniels, or does draft JJ McCarthy before Jaden Daniels? What if the quarterbacks go, and this is absurd to think about, but think about it with me for a second, because, you know, there's no guarantees as to what's going to happen. What if it goes Caleb Williams, Drake May, JJ McCarthy to the Patriots? I don't know if that would happen. Maybe somebody trades up to the number 3 spot and takes JJ McCarthy because that's how much they believe in him. And Jaden Daniels all of a sudden is on the board at 4. It feels like a trade is almost inevitable at that point. I think Jaden Daniels falling down the board in any way, even by 1 pick, is a huge, huge advantage to the Chargers at pick number 5. Because at that point, you have to believe that either the Cardinals or the Chargers are almost guaranteed to trade down for a team to go up and get Jaden Daniels, who I believe is the number 3 quarterback in this draft. I think there was a bit of a margin there, if you're asking me. Even if you're taking a look at rankings a month or 2 ago, I think you got Jaden Daniels up there in the top 10 with JJ McCarthy probably in the top 25. This huge swing in opinion could have some big consequences, positive consequences for the Chargers at 5. And maybe, just maybe, we could be in talks for a legendary trade. One of those things that happen in the draft once in a generation, where the Chargers may be involved in a trade down that involves the 5th straight quarterback off the board. Imagine that. I don't know how likely that is, but all this kind of adds up to the Chargers having a pretty good opportunity to grab a solid player at 5, or maybe, just maybe, get a huge haul in a trade down. Okay? And meanwhile, the Chargers, while all this is being set up with JJ McCarthy, while all this is being speculated at quarterback, they're setting themselves up for a pretty strong position throughout the remainder of the 2024 draft. The team has been stacking picks, man. And of course, I don't know if Keenan Allen was officially part of that plan. I think 1 or 2 of the big 4, what they're calling them, with Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Mike Williams, and Keenan Allen, I think 1 or 2 of them was certainly going to be cut or traded. I don't know how much Keenan Allen was involved in that planning, But either way, the team is grabbing more picks. At this point, the Chargers have accumulated 2 extra picks, a compensatory 7th-round pick, and, of course, the Bears pick in round number 4 for Keenan Allen. At this point, man, it feels like the Chargers are positioning themselves for something pretty unique here. JJ McCarthy going a lot higher than he should, perhaps even in front of the Chargers or at the Chargers pick. Chargers grabbing some extra ammunition in the middle and late rounds. Seems kind of special. And I'm telling you guys right now, I feel like, and it's just a gut feeling, but with all this setup and with what Jim Harbaugh has been putting in place, it feels like there's going to be a feeding frenzy for quarterback at 4 and 5. And I think more in particular, if JJ McCarthy goes in the top 5, especially inside the top 4, I think you're actually going to see a frenzy for teams wanting to trade up to pick number 5. And this kind of has a little bit of hand-to-hand to do. If there's any way, shape, or form Jaden Daniels makes it to us at pick number 5, you're going to see so many teams calling the Chargers to trade up. Because let's remember, there's more teams than just the Giants and Vikings that need quarterback. And that's going to up the price tremendously. Do I think that happens? I think it's very unlikely. But quite honestly, if the Vikings or if the Giants become that aggressive for JJ McCarthy in particular, and they want to guarantee him to their team, to their squad, they could very much so target the New England Patriots even for a trade down. And I think the Patriots would oblige. I think the Patriots, knowing that the Chargers, let's say they try to trade with the New York Giants, right? The Giants are desperate. They want to grab their guy. Let's say the Giants trade up 3 spots to the New England Patriots. I think the Patriots know that the Cardinals and the Chargers are not taking a quarterback. Even if another team trades up, they should still have a chance to get a pretty good one at number 6 if that's what they're aiming for. I don't know, man. It feels like something nuts could happen. And I think, again, all this setup has a lot to do with it. Now, to be clear, the Chargers, I think, are very much so involved in a trade down scenario involving quarterback. Again, whether it's Jaden Daniels, whether it's JJ McCarthy, I think the Chargers could be that team that moves down for that treasure trove of picks. There's a very realistic scenario, and I think this is still the most realistic one, in my opinion, most likely. You see 3 quarterbacks go off the board. Bears, Commanders, Patriots. And then I think the Arizona Cardinals are going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. Sure, I think it's also pretty likely that they trade down, but it just kind of feels like that's where it's headed. That leaves the Chargers at pick number 5 with a couple of options here. They could trade down to the New York Giants, just 1 pick, which has its advantages. Or they could trade down with the Minnesota Vikings, the 2 most likely trade partners, which also has its advantages. Okay? But at that point, if you're holding the keys to the kingdom for a couple of franchises for what they view to be their next franchise quarterback in JJ McCarthy, the price tag goes up substantially. Because there's something in the league called a quarterback tax when it comes to trading up in the draft. Quarterback tax involves a lot more value than what you would normally get for that pick straight up. Okay? And I think in the terms of the Chargers, if a guy like Jaden Daniels or JJ McCarthy sitting there at 5 and their team's trying to bid up for him, the Bolts could be in play for a monster haul trading down from the number 5 position. I'm talking 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, maybe even more on top of that. This is kind of similar to the position that the Panthers took in trading up for Bryce Young in 2023. I think they ended up giving up 2 firsts, 2 seconds, DJ Moore, and maybe even more. I don't remember. It was a lot of picks, a lot of ammunition to move up to that spot. Granted, that was a number 1 overall pick in the draft, but the quarterback tax still applies here. The Chargers, again, depending on the trade partner, I think at least reel in 2 first-round picks, whether it be 2 from this season or 1 from this year and 1 from next year, and I think a little bit of change on the side. And that is something that honestly really makes me think twice before saying, hey, what are we doing at number 5 in terms of receiver, right? It's kind of interesting to think about the position that Joe Ortiz could be put in terms of, I have a chance to make something big happen here. Yes, this wide receiver class is special. Yes, the top 3 guys are special. Yes, I do certainly believe that the Chargers, in landing Malik Nabers, who's the most likely guy to fall to us in my opinion, will become a much different team behind superstars like Herbert and Nabers all of a sudden leading the offense with a really prominent, balanced running attack. It feels very special. But that sort of return, the potential of 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick maybe thrown in there, maybe even a little bit more. I don't know if that's possible for me to pass up. Because let's remember, this wide receiver class is very special. This class, in terms of a couple positions, very special. Offensive line, corner, wide receiver. This is one of the craziest, most talented classes I've seen in a long time. And if you can get, I don't know how many extra picks for a team that is so desperate to grab a quarterback, maybe this is the vision of Jim Harbaugh. Maybe this is the vision of Joe Ortiz. And it's something that, honestly, I think we have to prepare ourselves for if the opportunity arises. I think it's something that the Chargers would pounce on. This season, man, again, maybe with the best draft prospects I've ever seen, this would be the year to kind of do something like that. This will be the year where a 4th-round pick that we got for Keenan Allen can be viewed more like a 3rd-round pick because of the kind of talent that's going to be available there. For instance, a guy that you drafted in the 4th round this season would have easily been available or maybe drafted in maybe the 3rd round last season in previous classes. It's just so stacked. It's so overflowed with quality players this year. Even considering, 2 first-round picks if the Chargers went that route, you can consider those guys top 10 for the most part in most other draft classes. It's very special. And that's something I want to ask you guys in the comment section below. Is this something that you guys are super into? Or is this something that you guys are pushing for and advocating for? The trade down, the trade down, the trade down? Well, you guys might have your answers or your prayers answered, because I do think that in some way, shape, or form, maybe this is something that Jim Harbaugh is setting up. Jim Harbaugh effect is fully in effect at this point. And the other thing that I think is kind of the cherry on top to maybe this whole strategy is the fact that Jim Harbaugh not only is looking at one of the best draft classes I've seen, but also provides some of the most in-depth, first-hand experience looks at these prospects that anybody's going to have in the NFL. This man's going to know these guys way better than almost anybody taking a look at these from a coach's perspective. And that kind of works hand in hand with the GM in terms of, I don't know about this guy in the middle round or this guy in the late round. Jim Harbaugh is going to know because he's been recruiting them for 3 or 4 years. I mean, as long as they've been, in college football. It's exciting. It's exciting to think about all of these things working hand in hand for the Chargers to have some kind of advantage in this draft. So you can almost take that perspective of, right, what a 4th round pick means in 2024. You can add a little bit of sauce to it. The talent makes them more of a 3rd round pick. The Chargers being positioned so high, let's say, the 2nd round, right? Pick number 37. You could almost view that as a 1st round pick because of how high you are in the 2nd round. You're almost immediately picking up, and you're always going to see guys that should have been drafted in the 1st round still available in the 2nd. That's the advantage of selecting high in the 2nd round, because you're always going to find guys like that. But in this particular draft class, you're going to see way more of those guys available at pick number 37. And then on top of that, the extra sauce, Jim Harbaugh has a unique perspective on all of these guys. You're really going to get the biggest bang for your buck in 2024, more so than in any other draft that we've seen in a long, long time. And for that reason, I got a couple of mock drafts I want to share with you guys. We'll kind of go over these kind of quickly. A couple of different scenarios I want to break down for you dudes in terms of what this could sort of kind of look like if Jim Harbaugh really has set things up the way I thought he has. So in this first one, right, let's just say things work out and shake out kind of what we're expecting, right, what we're predicting. The Minnesota Vikings see JJ McCarthy still available at pick number 5, and they trade up with the Chargers in order to grab him, make that happen. And let's say the return is 2 first-round picks, right? I do think there would be a tax on top of that, but let's go ahead and assume that it's just 2 first-round picks to start things off. This is kind of what you could be looking at in terms of return for the Chargers. Brock Bowers, he could still be there. Who knows what happens, right? And even if he's not there, you could swap him out with a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. If you want that offensive receiving weapon, one of those guys will be there. In this instance, Brock Bowers. A Jim Harbaugh guy. A position that would very much so fit the new offense. Love it. Love it so much. At pick number 23, our 2nd first-round pick, Nate Wiggins. Who, let's be honest, I don't know if he'll be available at 23, but somebody's going to fall. I think corner, honestly, there could be a guy. I've seen the Gene there a lot. McKinstry could, I think at very least McKinstry will be there. All of a sudden, you got your receiving guy, you got your corner. Kind of feels a little bit reminiscent of the Jets with Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner a little bit. Like, you have caliber players that could be available in the first round with those 2 picks in this particular draft class. Then you turn around in the second round. Again, you can almost view that as a low first round pick. Maybe we start seeing some Michigan guys fly off the board. Roman Wilson. And you got your slot dude that you can interchange with Brock Bowers or whatever in that position. The Chargers all of a sudden looking very strong with their receiving options for Justin Herbert. Then you turn around in the third round, you get another trench guy. You get a trench guy for Jim Harbaugh on the defensive side and Jesse Minter. Chris Jenkins, who I think would be a huge get in the third round. Then the fourth, this is where I feel like Jim Harbaugh and in particular Joe Ortiz could really get to work. I think they're going to find some value at offensive line in the fourth round. Maybe that's why they're starting to stack a little bit of picks in the fourth round, because if you take a look at Jim Harbaugh and what he offers, offensive line is probably going to be one of the biggest things that he brings perspective to in terms of position. This man, he wants to run the football. This man wants to protect the quarterback. Offensive line is going to be the position that makes that happen. And he's going to have some very strong perspective on this class coming in, which is one of the best I've ever seen at offensive line. But then you take a look at Joe Ortiz and his history with the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, they've selected some very talented offensive linemen throughout the years, but guess how many were in the first round? Is it 1, maybe 2 in the last 10 years? You know where they do some of their best work? In the middle rounds. I think Orlando Brown was a third round pick. The Ben Powers and Ben Cleveland, I think those guys were fourth round picks. Ortiz and Harbaugh do some of their best work in the middle rounds, I have to say. I have to assume in terms of offensive line. So I'm going to take one here in Matt Gonsalves, who, has a little bit of injury concern, but he can play multiple positions on the right side. You don't have to force him in because you got Trey Pipkins there right now, and he could develop into one of the best starters in this round in future seasons if you give him time to develop. That's the kind of guy I'm looking for in the fourth. And then turn around, we got another fourth round pick from the Bears. Let's go ahead and take another running back of the future, Marshawn Lloyd, who I think would be a very, very nice get for the Chargers to set up the future at running back with him and Gus Edwards. It feels like a nice group right there. All right. Well, let's look at another scenario, man. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and say we trade with the Vikings, but I'm going to put that quarterback tax on. Okay. I didn't include it here. I probably should have. I think I could have. But I think you can tack on an extra third round pick from next year's draft as well on top of this because of quarterback tax. And I think you can slide an extra fourth round in there. That's how crazy I think this could get. 2 first rounders, third next season, and a fourth this season. It feels like that's the kind of haul that you can get depending on the situation. Especially, let's say JJ McCarthy is the guy that they feel is most realistic to go get, the Minnesota Vikings. But all of a sudden, Jaden Daniels is sitting there at pick number 5. That could certainly raise the price. I think Jaden Daniels with the Vikings would be an awesome combo. All right? But let's just say for craps and giggles, this is what it kind of sets up to look like. Now the Chargers, you can tack on an extra fourth round pick because of that QB tax. And we're going to go pretty heavy on what I think a Harbaugh team could sort of look like in terms of priority of position. Let's say in round 1, with a trade down, the Chargers grab J.C. Latham, who is probably one of the best right tackles in this entire draft. And he fits the vision of Jim Harbaugh, maybe the best out of some of those early right tackles. I think you can make a really good case for Talise Fuaga. But I think J.C. Latham, who's spent a lot of time with the Chargers, I think it is pro day and in the offseason, is a guy that they could be targeting. And to take their guy in the first round, I wanted to see what that looks like. So let's say J.C. Latham is the first pick on a trade down. The Chargers get their mauler in terms of right tackle, in terms of that power run. They'll be very happy with it. Let's say in round 1, pick 23, if we're going a little bit more realistic here, let's say Kool-Aid McKinstry will be the pick there, who's been falling recently. There could be other corners available at 23, but let's say at very worst, Kool-Aid McKinstry is the guy that you pick up. I think you got a cornerback 1 all of a sudden. So now, through the setup of hyping a quarterback, Jim Harbaugh has his right tackle. Jesse Minter has his cornerback 1. Let's get some value with the rest of this trade down, man. In round 2, where we didn't get a wide receiver in round 1, this wide receiver class being very special, Let's say we see a Ladd McConkey in the second round. Boom, baby. Wide receiver 1 provided. Slot guy provided. You can move Ladd anywhere. He would be an awesome, awesome weapon for this offense. That would be a little bit more run balance. I think somebody like that is going to be available in the second round. Let's keep moving down. The Chargers, mind you, in this mock draft have 3 fourth-round picks. Jesse Minter and Jim Harbaugh get another trench guy in round 3 and Tavondre Sweat. Big, huge nose tackle. In round 4, and this is where you're going to see some nice value depending on Jim Harbaugh's unique perspective. Let's say Cade Stover is there. We didn't get Brock Bowers, but Cade Stover is a great consolation prize, man. This is a very nice blocking and receiving tight end. Should be available at the top of the 4th. You would be very happy with a pickup like this. Then at pick 110, best player available on the board, in my opinion, Cole Bishop. Mingling with Derwin James. Mix and match who's playing in the box, who's playing up high. And then pick 129, you pick up the Gus Edwards of the future and Braylon Allen. It just feels like a great combo there, man. I don't know. I'm feeling pretty good about that. So that trade down, it feels very Jim Harbaugh. It feels like a nice value. But ultimately, what I'm going to tell you guys right now, this is what I think's happening. This third mock draft, this is kind of the way I would go. This is what I think's happening. And I think ultimately this could be one of the best results. You guys let me know in the comment section which one of these you like the most, but this is mine right here. This is ultimately what I think's being set up. I think Jim Harbaugh is setting the table for the Chargers to have a realistic shot at Marvin Harrison Jr. Mind you, I think the Chargers are very well set up no matter who they pick up in terms of top 3 and wide receiver and Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, or Rome Odunze. I think any one of those 3 in this Chargers wide receiver room is set, right? But I think Marvin Harrison, to me, is still that special prospect coming into this season that is almost a guaranteed superstar, all-pro, one of the best wide receivers in the next 3 years, maybe the best wide receiver in the next 5 years in the NFL. Maybe that's what's being set up here. Granted, in this situation, and I think this is something that I'm starting to accept a little bit more in my heart, the Chargers are probably going to be trading down in the second round. Because of value, because of guys available in the second round. Maybe somebody slides and we decide to stick and pick, but if we're going to trade down, it feels like the second round is more appropriate here because of the level of talent that we're going to see at the top of the first round. So in my opinion, I think the JJ McCarthy setup, whether it's genuine or not, it could definitely be genuine. Of course, this man helped him win a national championship, but I think there's a little bit more to it. And I think if it results in the Chargers getting Marvin Harrison Jr., it will have been one of the best finesses in NFL history, or I should say the Chargers history, in terms of getting that talent at number 5 where your pick is at. In this scenario, I have the Chargers trading down in the second round, just a couple of picks down. Let's say the Texans want to move up, get themselves another weapon, get themselves another defensive guy. Leaving the Chargers a nice pick at number 42 with an extra 4th-round pick late in the 4th round this time. In the second round, picking up Mike Sainristil, their new slot corner. He'd be fantastic. They still got to figure out their outside guy, but Mike would be an awesome add for this team. In the 3rd round, they get their trench guy, getting Chris Jenkins. In the 4th round, you're going to try and find at least one offensive lineman. Bo Limmer's not a bad idea here. Maybe there's another guy we don't know about. Of course, we're talking a little bit about Fisher a little bit too. That could be a guy that you can target a little bit later. In the 4th round, Malik Washington, the Chargers double dipping at wide receiver, get their outside guy and their slot guy in the first 4 rounds, which is very exciting. Malik Washington would be an awesome weapon for the Chargers in the slot. And the tail end of the 4th round, they get Ben Sinnott, who is, in my opinion, one of the best Harbaugh fits at tight end in this draft. This is kind of where I'm feeling, right? 4th round, 3rd round, these feel like great values. These feel like realistic prizes in a trade down scenario for the Chargers, whether it's the second round, whether it's the first round. 3rd and 4th round picks feel like something that we can really pile on to this season with some intelligent moves. And I think Jim Harbaugh and Joe Ortiz have started that movement a little bit. They've done a really good job at setting it up. And something like this could certainly happen. Whether it's something pretty dramatic, like we're really going trench heavy, we're really going, some value in the first round with 2 first-round picks, seems really exciting. Or something as simple as, we wanted Marvin Harrison and this was maybe the best avenue to make that happen. Something's in the works in the background. And I think Jim Harbaugh has a hand to play in this. I think the narratives that he paints is playing to this. And I think that ultimately he's respected enough in this league that when he says something, people listen. And if what he's saying is that JJ McCarthy is a top quarterback in this class, and the result is that a team like the Minnesota Vikings trades up to pick him up, putting the Chargers in a better draft position, if that's the result of it, I don't know if I'd be that shocked about that. Jim Harbaugh is a very smart dude, man. And I think he's already gotten to work in terms of the offseason of how he can help the Chargers become the best possible version of themselves in 2024. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been the Director. Sorry, I've been a little bit tired today. Pretty much an all-nighter up with the kid. But I had to talk about this, having, been up reading about what Jim Harbaugh was talking about JJ McCarthy. And the talk as to how crazy it's getting with who's going to be available at pick number 5 or what a trade down scenario could look like. So you guys let me know in the comment section below what that means to you. Well, guys, thank you for joining me. This has been the Director. If you like what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. I'm still about that Marvin Harrison at number 5, man. I think that's a dream scenario to come true for me.